Andrew Urquhart with you today, and joining me in the Rhema studio, John Cowan. John, kia ora.
It's a pleasure to be here. Kia ora.
Thinking back to Christmases past, said Ebenezer, one gift that I got from a first cousin of mine, which I'll always remember, he says, "Take my advice, I'm not using it." It was a little plaque that he gave me. I thought, oh, that's rather clever. And I actually caught myself in that situation yesterday. I was talking to there's a group of guys, the men's group at my church, and I said, well, here's a really good idea of something you might want to do. And then I thought, but I don't do it, do I?
Well, I'm very grateful for my postgraduate degree in hypocrisy that allows me to hand out advice like that.
Exactly. And this is the topic that we're talking about today. Take my advice, I'm not using it, otherwise known as how to give advice about giving advice, right?
The first thing, probably, the first advice about giving advice is that you probably shouldn't. Not unless you really, really are sure that your advice is going to be of use, that it's true, that you're doing it for the right motive, that you think you're going to be helping a person.
Unsolicited is never really a good idea unless you're a solicitor.
And can charge for it.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
You like Veritasium, don't you? It's
no idea what it is.
It's a channel on YouTube. Well, if you haven't discovered it, you should.
Okay.
It's usually looking into some aspect of philosophy or more typically science.
It sounds more intellectual than me, but I will check it out.
It is. I only understand about half of the ones I'll try and watch, and about half of them. So it was talking about Amelia Earhart and her flight across the Pacific and trying to find this tiny little island. Yeah. And she had radio equipment, and sometimes she could connect with the people and sometimes she couldn't. But as we know, she was lost at sea and never found again. And it was talking about how there was a naval person in charge of the radio operations who could have intervened and saved the situation by giving wise, timely advice to Amelia. But he chose not to, because he didn't think it was his place. He thought, well, she probably knows more than I do. And
mansplaining is not what is needed.
Well, it was in that case. And so the guy with Veritasium says, with knowledge comes authority and the duty to exercise that authority. And I thought, is that right?
Wow.
Because it's taken me all my life to learn how to hold my tongue. Yeah. To stop giving advice.
I think, though, to be fair, there's a huge difference between knowledge and opinion.
Oh, yes. Sometimes I'm not sure what that is.
No.
But I'm sure there is that difference.
I think that's wisdom, which is a different category again. Wisdom is the difference to tell the difference between knowledge and opinion. Yeah.
And so there was this thing of, do you actually have a duty? And sometimes if you see some people, heading towards a cliff, you have a duty to inform you, oi, there's a cliff over there. And that takes a bit of courage and sometimes won't be welcome. And so how do you actually give advice like that, which is a bit different from just sharing your opinion about what the government should be doing? And I am still waiting to have some flashes of insight on how to do that well. But just a few ideas is about advice in general is, first of all, and you've already alluded to this, a huge dollop of humility about the limits and fallibility of our own knowledge. Yep. I have certain knowledge about things that I think I know, and I'm happy to share those, but sometimes I have had to, eat humble pie and think, oops, okay, that's not right. Yeah. And so often it's great to prefix your knowledge with your what you think is knowledge is, what do you think about this? Okay. Or I heard this, what do you think about that? And why would you think that? And just and then sort of back up what you have. And that way it becomes, rather you pontificating, lecturing, being pedantic, it's more like a discussion. Let's see if we can find out what the truth is about this.
Like a conversation and getting them to think through the idea rather than saying, this is what you should do. Do as you're told.
That's right. Because effective advice is not just having the right advice. It has to be received. Yeah. And the big gatekeeper of whether advice is received or not is relationship. I remember hearing about this in the context of education, especially educating boys. I was going to a seminar on how to educate boys, and the wise head up the front, whose advice I was actually taking, said, boys don't learn subjects, they learn teachers.
Okay.
And he said girls will often get around a teacher they don't like to get to the subject, but boys don't. If they don't like a teacher, if they don't like the maths teacher, they don't like maths.
It's done.
If they don't like the science teacher, they don't like science.
Yeah.
And so relationship is so much.
I'm thinking back to my high school maths days, but no, I just think I'm rubbish at maths. John, I can't blame the teacher on this one.
I am ever so grateful to good old Henderson Maximum Security High that I went to. It had some wonderful teachers, and some of whom I'm still friends with. 40, 50 years later.
Wow.
And so that's another story. But because I like the teachers, I like the advice, and so timing is often a big thing. Think the long game.
Okay.
If you want to be able to be in a mentor relationship with this person, rather than just firing off an explosive shell of advice.
Yeah.
That will devastate their ideas, and you can then say, I told you so afterwards if they don't take it. Yeah.
But actually, sometimes that's the best time to do it. You're talking beforehand about, hey, warn them about the cliff that's happening.
Yeah.
Actually, they're probably more willing to listen at the bottom of the cliff when you turn up with an ambulance and you go, hey, it's awful what's happened. How can I help you not make the same mistake in the future? Actually telling people about something that's coming up, they perhaps aren't as ready to listen as when they've had the opportunity to make their own mistakes and then go, hey, maybe there was something in that thing that they said beforehand.
Ooh, all right. Here, I'm going to put this to you. What do you do if you see someone heading into a calamitous relationship and it's as plain as the nose on their face that this is going?
Honestly, that depends very much on how close I am to that person.
Okay.
So if I'm in a close relationship with that person,
yes,
then for me to go, don't be in a relationship with them, they're an awful person, I suppose there's a risk that would cause a broken relationship with the person that I'm close to.
I know that. And so this is a huge risk that makes us stay stumm. Yeah. But I know someone eventually confronted her about her engagement. And she heeded the advice, broke the relationship off, and then lots of other people said, oh, yes, we could see that wasn't right and everything. Yeah. She's thinking, why didn't you tell me? I'm very grateful that person got that advice because she then went on to marry me. So,
oh, you weren't the person that the advice was given about? It was the previous guy, right?
Given to other people, other women.
Yeah, I mean,
so sometimes you do need that courage to confront.
It is a difficult one though, and like you're saying, it's not just having an opinion; it's whether or not the person is likely to receive that opinion, or whether it's likely to cause more relational problems. Right.
That's right, and this is why it's one of the most tricky things. Yeah, and so that's where that dash of humility, building up the relationship, making it in the form of a dialogue. Being curious to find out more about their situation and the way that they've come to their point of view before you challenge their point of view, because there might be all sorts of things you're not aware of, and not investing too much in the outcome. Okay. If you think someone's going to buy a brand of car and you don't like it, and they end up buying it anyway. Yeah. You don't sort of then sneer every time they pull up and you drive. You welcome them. Yeah. Okay. Ask them how they're going. Bite your lip when they tell you about that huge repair they've just had to do that you could have helped avoid. But again, could I just say, we sometimes have that duty to inform. Yeah. And so we'll carry that responsibility carefully, cautiously, and deploy it with a great deal of wisdom and love.
And I think, especially when it comes to relationships, if those relationships are important, then they're more important than whether or not that person accepts our advice or wisdom.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the final thing, Dr. House and Doc Martin, appalling. If they didn't have good script writers controlling the outcome, they would be, absolute abject failures in their profession and in their roles.
So what you're saying then is good advice gets in the way of comic genius.
Makes entertaining programs having these obnoxious people confronting people with advice they didn't want to hear. Exactly. And then end up being right and saving the situation in real life.
And I think that's
use them as bad examples.
Exactly. That is a good example of people being bad examples for other people to avoid.
Exactly. And entertaining ones at that.
A great object lesson. John, thank you so much for joining us in the studio today. Thanks for your wisdom and advice.
Cheers.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.